How often do you feel like your prayers are just going unanswered? I mean, you feel like they're just bouncing off the ceiling and coming right back at you. I think more often than not when that happens, it's because we really don't understand what prayer is about. We get confused into thinking that prayer is about me just telling God what I want him to know. Today, let's learn how to pray in a way that our prayers get answered. Relationship experts tell us that we ought to do more listening than talking with those with whom we want to have a relationship. You know what? I think they're right. You know why I do? It's because that's what God says. In James chapter 1, verse 19, the Bible clearly says, my dear brothers, take note of this. Everyone should be, listen to these three things, quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, slow to wrath. Now, wouldn't it be true that our relationship with one another should be like our relationship with God? I mean, we're made in his image, right? And if we need to be quick to listen and slow to speak and slow to wrath in human relationships, I would think we need that in godly relationships too. If we want to be in a relationship with God, the idea is listening more than we're speaking. That needs to guide all of our prayers. And a primary problem that we face, I mean, one of the major issues in our prayer life is that we do all the talking. I mean, it's like we use prayer simply as a means of telling God everything we want him to do on earth. But that's not really prayer. That's a one-sided means of communication where we're just trying to convince God to do what we want him to do to fulfill our agenda on earth. What prayer ought to be is a two-way street, a two-way communication, a two-sided conversation. It's less about what we're saying. It's more about what we're hearing. Prayer is finding out what God is doing on this earth, because we want to become participators in his agenda. And if we become participators in his agenda, we can walk in the miraculous. I mean, we can see God do these amazing things on this earth because we can speak with spiritual authority. Now listen to me, Satan does not want you to understand spiritual authority, because if you understand it, you just might utilize it in prayer. The whole reason is this. We come to church, we read our Bibles, we listen to Christian music, we say our prayers. And if we do that, we need to understand that it's not simply to gain information. It's to be able to access the heavenly authority, the legal authority that is going to execute his will in human history. Here's the deal. God created us so we could rule the world. God said, I'm going to create humanity in my own image, and they'll be able to act on my behalf in the visible realm so that what we do in the invisible realm as God is revealed in the visible realm through humanity. God created us to be like him so we could be able to communicate with him, so we could understand what he's up to, and we could cooperate with his agenda on this earth. We could exercise his will in human history. That's why free will is such a big deal. God won't override our will. He doesn't want to. He wants us to choose to cooperate with his will. And the way to do this is to know his will and then surrender to his will, but we do that through prayer. Now, that's a powerful concept. It's so powerful that in human history, God even at times, based on his dialogue with mankind, chose to change his course. Think about that. Men talking with God changed God's course on earth. Hezekiah lived 15 more years. Lot and his family were saved because of the prayers of Abraham. I mean, God changed his mind based on men's prayers. I was going to do this. Now I'm going to do this. Why? Because of prayer. For many people, prayer is boring. You know why it's boring? Because we don't know what to say. Or we say the same thing over and over and over and over and over every single day. We pray the same way, day after day after day, because we don't want to make prayer a two-way conversation with God. It's all one-sided. We do all the talking. We don't do any of the listening. And we don't find God's desires, but simply focus on what we want. I just want you to hear me. Prayer is not a minor thing. God says that we literally have access to him so we can pull down the will of God in heaven on this present earth. Man is allowed to participate in God's purposes through the power of prayer. Doesn't the Lord's Prayer say, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven? Thy kingdom needs to come, and thy is your kingdom on this earth, your will on this earth. We're literally able to pull down God's will to earth by praying the prayer, so that in the visible world, we see the desires of the invisible world. If you like what you're hearing, hit the like button, then subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification bell. That way you'll be notified when we upload videos. Man is allowed to participate in God's purposes through the power of prayer. Doesn't the Lord's Prayer say, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven? Thy kingdom needs to come, and thy is your kingdom on this earth, your will on this earth. We're literally able to pull down God's will to earth by praying the prayer, so that in the visible world, we see the desires of the invisible world. What that means is that we're able to participate in what God's doing on this earth. I mean, the very same thing that God's doing there is being sent down to us. And here's the big deal. You can see it in your life through the power of prayer. God's goal is to connect the two realms. What God is after is he wants to connect what's going on in heaven with what's going on in earth. And prayer is literally giving God, and the way I would say it, by your free will, you're giving God to exercise his free will on this earth and produce heavenly activity on earth while we're praying in heavenly realms. It's earth giving him permission to intervene in human affairs. Doesn't mean that God can't intervene in human affairs despite us. He can. But what God did is gave us free moral agency, so it'll never go against our will. And if you want to participate with what God's doing, you have to get in tune with what his will is. And that means if you're going to rule on this earth, you have to allow God to speak to your heart. And whether we obey or participate in his will or not, I'm just telling you, he's not going to force it on you. You have to choose it. And he works through people. That's the way God works. And he'll only work when he has a willing vessel. That's why James says in James chapter 4, verses 2 and 3, you have not because you ask not. And you ask and don't receive because you ask amiss. So you spend it on your own pleasures. He says you're asking with the wrong motives. In other words, I'm not concerned with the request because you asked with the wrong motive. Prayer releases God to do what God intended to do. You line your will with his will. And when you do, you call forth into history what God has determined from eternity. Jesus is telling his disciples that he's leaving. He's saying, I'm done. I'm going to the cross. He has to do his Father's business on this earth. And he's been preparing them for him to go to the cross. But he's going to resurrect. He's going to ascend into heaven. He's sharing that plan with his disciples. And in John 14, it's like his disciples in this conversation with him hit the panic button. Well, I can understand that. I probably would have hit the panic button too. Most of you would have hit the panic button. And they start just peppering him with questions. As he answers the question to Thomas, he says in verse 7 of John 14, if you'd known me, you would have known my Father also. And from now on, you know him and have seen him. Philip says to him an amazing thing. He says, Lord, show us the Father, and it'll be sufficient for us. He's really talking about the fact that if you'll do that, we'll be okay. Here's the issue that Jesus is getting at. The disciples have been hanging with Jesus, abiding with Jesus for 3 years. They've been learning, and now Jesus tells them, hey, I'm leaving. They start asking questions and going crazy. And Philip says, before you go, let us see the Father. Jesus says to him, you know what, Philip, I've been with you for a while, but you haven't come to know me. Look at verse 9 and verse 10. It says, have I been with you so long and yet you have not known me, Philip? He who has seen me has seen the Father. So how can you say, show me the Father? Do you not believe that I'm in the Father? The Father's in me? What he's really saying is, look, Philip, I've declared the Father to you. I've shown him to you in everything I've done. And if you'd known me, you would have known the Father. Now let me make the point, and then we'll pick up here next time and talk some more about prayer, okay? Philip is already saved. he's already on his way to heaven. He's already a Christian, as we would say it in our common vernacular. That's how we describe it. But Jesus says to him, I've been with you a long time, and you don't know me. You know what my point would be to you? It's possible to be a Christian and not know him. It's possible to be on your way to heaven and not recognize him on the earth. Jesus has shown up around us time after time after time, and we didn't see him, we didn't recognize him, and we didn't know his voice. He was talking, but we didn't listen. We didn't recognize him sending somebody our way. When that person came from him, we didn't connect with him. We just thought it was some random person just making their way through our lives, somebody coming our way. Jesus has led us to hear certain things, but we didn't hear them. Is it possible that we can be like Philip, saved and yet not know him? He knew him as Christ, the Messiah, but he didn't know him as Christ, the Redeemer and the Savior. And what Christ wants is for us to know him intimately, not just to be saved, but to be closer to him. Philip's already saved. He's walking with Jesus. He's talking with Jesus. So what Jesus is trying to tell Philip and us is that this whole discussion about prayer is a discussion about intimacy. It's about closeness. Verse 10, say it again. Do you not believe that I'm in the Father, and the Father is in me? We're one. The words that I say to you, I don't speak on my own. No, that's not where they come from. I don't speak it on my own initiative. But the Father abiding in me, that's our word, abiding. The Father abiding in me is our word. You got to hear that. In me, he does his work. In me, he says what I tell you. That's what Jesus is saying to him. I only tell you what I tell you because God told me to tell you. I don't talk just to talk. I talk because he told me to tell you something. I do what I do because he's doing it through me. Until we get that in our personal lives, we're in trouble. The meaning of prayer is having intimate dialogue with God where we know Jesus and he knows us. I hope this helps you begin to understand the dynamic of prayer. Be blessed.